You ever meet someone who does something absolutely terrible and then just goes about their day like nothing happened? They cut in line, stole your parking spot, ghosted you after 3 years, or maybe borrowed money and somehow made you feel bad for bringing it up. And you're sitting there thinking, do they feel anything? Well, here's the thing. Some of them genuinely don't. And no, I'm not talking about monsters or movie villains. I'm talking about real, everyday people. Maybe someone at your job, maybe someone in your family, maybe someone you dated, who are wired in a very specific psychological way that makes guilt feel completely foreign to them. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to recognize these people immediately. And more importantly, you're going to understand why they are the way they are and what that means for you. Let's start with a quick little mental experiment. Think about a time you accidentally hurt someone's feelings. Maybe you forgot a birthday, or said something rude without thinking, or canceled plans at the last minute. Now, how did that feel? If you felt that little squeeze in your chest, that low-key anxiety, that I need to fix this energy, congratulations. You have a fully functioning guilt response. You're a normal human being. But there are people out there who, in that same situation, feel absolutely nothing. Zero, zip, nada. They don't lose sleep. They don't replay the moment. They don't text you at 2 a.m. saying, hey, I've been thinking and I'm really sorry. They just move on. And psychology has a lot to say about why. So let's talk about what guilt actually is, because most of us have never stopped to think about it. Guilt is basically your brain's way of saying, hey, you did something that conflicts with your values. You hurt someone. Fix it. It's a social glue. It keeps us from being absolutely terrible to each other. Without guilt, civilization kind of falls apart, and that only slightly dramatically. Guilt activates specific areas of your brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex. These are the parts responsible for empathy, moral reasoning, and emotional regulation. When these areas are firing properly, you feel guilt, you feel remorse, you feel the urge to make things right. But here's where it gets interesting. Not everyone's brain works this way. Now, hold on, because what I'm about to tell you is one of the most fascinating things modern psychology has uncovered in the last couple of decades. There's a specific psychological profile, and it's more common than you think, where the guilt circuit is basically on airplane mode, and it's called the me-first mindset. Psychologists sometimes tie this to a cluster of traits known as the Dark Triad. Sounds dramatic, right? The Dark Triad. Like a Marvel villain team. But it's a real psychological concept. It includes 3 personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. And before you picture a guy in a cape twirling his mustache, these traits exist on a spectrum. Mild versions of these are walking around us every single day. And the common thread? A dramatically reduced or completely absent capacity for guilt. Let's break these down one by one, because each one is its own fascinating rabbit hole. First, narcissism. Now, everyone throws this word around these days. Oh, he's such a narcissist. But actual narcissistic personality traits go way deeper than just posting too many selfies. At the core of narcissism is an inflated sense of self-importance, combined with a startling lack of empathy. Narcissists genuinely believe the world revolves around them, not as a figure of speech, but as a deeply held belief. Here's a real-life example. Imagine you have a coworker. Let's call him Brad. Brad takes credit for your project in front of the boss. When you confront him about it, he looks at you completely puzzled and says, well, I did contribute a lot to the vision. And he actually means it. In Brad's head, he didn't do anything wrong. He contributed the vision. That's huge. Why are you even upset? That's narcissism in action. It's not that Brad is pretending not to feel guilty. He genuinely doesn't, because in his version of reality, he didn't do anything wrong. Narcissists rewrite stories automatically. Their brain edits reality to protect their self-image. And guilt requires you to see yourself as the one who caused harm, something a narcissist's ego simply will not allow. Now, here's something that'll really mess with your head. Studies have shown that narcissists don't just lack guilt. they often experience something completely different when they hurt someone. Instead of guilt, they feel shame. But there's a massive difference between shame and guilt. And this is where psychology gets really juicy. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. And shame, when it hits a narcissist, doesn't make him want to apologize. It makes him defensive, explosive, or downright dismissive. See, their whole identity is built on being superior. If they admit fault, that identity falls apart. So, the next time someone reacts to your reasonable complaint with sudden rage or complete stonewalling, well, you might be witnessing a shame response dressed up as confidence. Wild, right? Now let's dive into Machiavellianism. And yeah, it's as cunning as it sounds. This trait's named after Niccolò Machiavelli, the 16th century Italian philosopher who basically wrote the book on manipulation and political strategy. His most famous idea, the ends justify the means. Folks high in Machiavellianism are strategic. They're like chess players, looking at social situations and asking, how do I win this? They're not necessarily mean, just calculated. They form relationships based on what those relationships can do for them. And guilt? Guilt would only slow them down, so their brain learns to suppress it. Here's a simple example. You know that friend who's unbelievably charming when they need something from you, and then mysteriously busy when you need them back? That's a low-level Machiavellian pattern. They're not evil, just trained to prioritize their own goals above everything else. And here's the kicker. Machiavellian people often know exactly what they're doing. Unlike narcissists who genuinely buy into their own story, Machiavellian types know they're bending the rules. They just don't feel bad about it. In their world, everyone's playing the same game. You're just not playing it as well as they are. And now, psychopathy. I know, I row. When you hear psychopath, you picture a crime documentary on Netflix at 11 p.m. But clinical psychopathy isn't about being violent. It's about emotional flatness. Psychopathy is marked by a severely reduced ability to feel fear, anxiety, and, you guessed it, guilt. The emotional responses most folks experience automatically just don't spark the same way in psychopathic brains. Neuroimaging studies, actual brain scans, have shown that when psychopathy individuals see images of people in pain, the empathy-related areas of their brain show significantly less activation than in others. Mirror neuron system. Basically, your brain's empathy engine is running on low power. Now here's the fascinating part, and something most folks don't know. There are two types of psychopathy. Primary psychopathy, which is largely genetic and neurological, and secondary psychopathy, which can develop as a trauma response. Some folks shut down their emotional responses because they had to, because feeling was too dangerous in their upbringing. This doesn't make the behavior okay, but it does make it understandable. Let's take a quick breather, because I want to ask you something. Do you know someone in your life who fits any of these patterns? Someone who never apologizes? Someone who always has an excuse? Someone who, no matter what happens, always finds a way to make themselves the victim, even when they're clearly the one who caused the problem? If you're nodding right now, you're not alone. And you're not crazy for finding these folks exhausting. Because here's what psychology confirms. These aren't just personality quirks. These are deeply ingrained patterns, formed over years, sometimes decades, fundamentally changing how a person processes responsibility and harm. You cannot guilt trip someone who doesn't feel guilt. You can't shame someone whose brain has armored itself against shame. And understanding that is honestly one of the most freeing things you'll ever learn. Now, let's talk about where this me-first mindset actually comes from. Because folks aren't born clicking the skip empathy button. Or are they? This is one of the big debates in psychology. Nature versus nurture. On the nature side, research shows that traits like psychopathy and narcissism have a significant genetic component. Twin studies, for instance, reveal that identical twins are more likely to share narcissistic traits than fraternal twins, even when raised apart. So some folks are born with a brain that's wired differently. One that doesn't naturally generate strong empathic responses. One where the guilt signal is faint, like a radio station you can barely tune into. But nurture plays a huge role too. Kids who grow up in environments where empathy was never modeled, where their emotional needs were dismissed, where they were either overpraised without being taught accountability, or severely punished without being taught to understand their emotions, these kids often develop me-first survival strategies. If every time you showed vulnerability as a kid, someone used it against you, you learned to armor up. If every time you made a mistake, the punishment was way over the top, you learned to never admit fault. If every time you expressed guilt, you were mocked or ignored, your brain picks up, guilt is pointless. Don't feel it. It's adaptation. Twisted, difficult adaptation, but adaptation nonetheless. Here's something that'll surprise you. Not all folks with low guilt capacity are cold. Some of them are incredibly charming, energetic, fun to be around, the life of the party. They make you feel special, right up until the moment they don't. And this is why these patterns are so confusing to deal with emotionally, because you're not dealing with someone who's obviously terrible. You're dealing with someone who can be wonderful, and then completely flip, and then act like the flip never happened. Psychologists call this affective inconsistency. The emotional experience of being around someone who operates this way is genuinely disorienting. One day they're the most attentive, caring person. The next, they've done something hurtful and are looking at you like you've grown a second head for being upset about it. And here's the thing, they're not necessarily faking the good times. They can feel good emotions, excitement, pleasure, pride, even love in their own way. What's missing or muted is the other side, the discomfort that comes from recognizing they've caused harm. Let's talk about something really practical now, because knowledge without application is just interesting trivia. How do you actually deal with someone who operates with a me-first mindset? First, stop expecting apologies that will never come. This one is hard. We're wired for resolution. We want the confrontation, the acknowledgement, the "you're right, I'm sorry, it won't happen again." But if you're dealing with someone who genuinely can't feel guilt, that conversation will never go the way you need it to. And every time you try to get it, you'll walk away feeling worse. Second, don't try to make them feel guilty. It won't work, and it'll exhaust you. Trying to make a guilt-resistant person feel guilt is like trying to fill a bathtub with the drain open. You can pour and pour, but nothing holds. Third, set clear, consequence-based boundaries. Not emotional appeals. Not "you hurt me and here's why." Instead, "if this happens again, here's what I will do." Because while guilt doesn't motivate them, consequences often do. Especially Machiavellian types respond to outcomes. If the cost of a behavior outweighs the benefit, they'll adjust. Fourth, protect your own mental health. It is not your job to fix, heal, or change someone who has spent decades building a psychological fortress against self-accountability. You can love someone and still accept that you cannot reach the version of them you need. Now, here's a curveball, and I love this part. Can people with low guilt capacity actually change? The honest answer is sometimes, but rarely, and almost never without serious, sustained therapeutic work. Research shows that certain types of therapy, particularly schema therapy and dialectical behavior therapy, have had some success with narcissistic and even mildly psychopathic traits. But the catch is enormous. The person has to want to change. And wanting to change requires some level of awareness that something is wrong. And for someone who genuinely doesn't feel guilt, who has never experienced that uncomfortable nudge to do better, there's very little internal motivation to look inward. There are cases, though, usually triggered by a significant life event, a major loss, a relationship that finally walked away for good, a health crisis. Sometimes that's enough to crack the armor, to let a small amount of light in, to start the slow, painful process of learning emotional accountability. It doesn't happen often, but it happens. And when it does, it's genuinely one of the most profound human transformations psychology has ever documented. Let me leave you with one last thought, because I think this is the most important thing I'll say in this entire video. Understanding the me-first mindset is not about excusing it. It's not about feeling sorry for people who've hurt you or talking yourself out of your completely valid anger. It's about clarity. When you understand why someone doesn't feel guilt, Whether it's their neurology, their trauma, their personality structure, you stop taking it personally. You stop asking yourself what you did wrong. You stop wondering what magic combination of words might finally make them see the damage they caused. You realize this is about them, their wiring, their walls, not you. And that realization, that's freedom. You can't change someone else's capacity for guilt, but you can change how much power their lack of guilt has over your life. You can choose who you invest your energy in. You can choose to surround yourself with people whose guilt circuit is fully online. People who, when they hurt you, actually feel it. Who reach out. Who try to repair things. Those people exist. In fact, they're probably most of the people in your life. We just tend to give the most mental real estate to the ones who hurt us. In 2026, with everything going on in the world, the pressure, the noise, the constant comparison, protecting your emotional energy is not selfish. It's survival. So recognize the me first people. Understand them. And then, when necessary, put yourself first for once. If this video made you think, even a little bit, about someone in your life, or maybe even a patting in yourself, I want to hear about it. Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And honestly, the comment section on videos like this always turns into the most real, most honest conversations on the internet, which I love. Hey, if you've made it all the way to the end of this video, you're clearly the kind of person who actually wants to understand people. The kind who thinks deeply. He takes relationships seriously. Who gives a genuine damn about why humans are the way they are. Those are my people, and I make videos for exactly you. So if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right now. Because every time I go deep into the psychology of human behavior, relationships, mindset, and the weird, wonderful, complicated ways our brains work, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Trust me, it's going to hit different. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next one.